Welcome to the Ascension Path with Twin Essence. I'm Lacey.
And I'm Marley, and we're your Starseed Lightworker and Psychic Medium hosts.
We're identical twins with spiritual abilities and Starseed missions on Earth. On the Ascension Path, we discuss what it's like to be identical twins serving in a spiritual capacity and provide insights into our work as Starseeds. We create a sacred space to receive channeled messages, intuitive teachings, and expansive conversations that elevate your frequency and support your evolution. Join us to learn about navigating the path to Ascension and becoming the most authentic, aligned version of you. Take what resonates and leave the rest. Today, we are diving into Maldek, a planet that is said to have disappeared. A little bit mysterious energetically, since they are claiming that this planet doesn't exist anymore, at least from a maybe scientific perspective. We can't necessarily prove its existence, or maybe we can't disprove its existence either. But we are going to be channeling and connecting with Maldekian Star beings and talking about Maldekian Starseeds as well, their human incarnation, what we see them manifest as in their human incarnations, as well as any challenges, traits, growth edges, etc. Now, they have a very, very interesting energy because it is not the typical airy-fairy, light, fun, sunshine, rainbow polarity that most star beings have. They don't feel incredibly negative, but they feel like in a human incarnation, their polarity is going to really vary. They are a dominant, I would say more masculine and divine energy types, and they really come through powerfully with these green color tones. And this is going to sound strange, but energetically, they feel very sharp. And so what I mean by that is the visuals with colors and graphics is very much like edgy, so sharp with edges, corners, and angles. It's not like a flowing green. It's very much sharp, dominant, and acute in energy, how it looks and feels. I would even argue that they have physical attributes that also look sharp and edgy. And what I mean by that is there's a spikiness to them, but there's also a rock hard, for lack of a better descriptor, physical exterior that they have. It is giving me,
Yes.
is it The Thing? Yes, from Fantastic Four, like The Thing. Or you said rock hard, and immediately I went to The Boys. There's a superhero in that series called that, who's like a rock. But that is so true. They very much appear like almost like this granite or like obsidian. Like I think of like a dark rock. That's their energy. Like it's hard and it is like tough exterior. And they do have that green tone though.
Yes.
They do have that bright green tone. I like to call it Slytherin energy.
Yes.
And it's almost like energetically, if I were to equate them to a crystal, they literally look and feel like Moldavite to me. I don't even work with Moldavite, but for some reason, they're like Moldavite as a crystal to me, which is kind of an alien crystal, I believe. Or they say it's alien-like. Otherworldly, yeah. It definitely feels like it's like mined from space. Yes. And like they're showing the aspects of that Moldavite like crystal exterior as like landmarks on their planet even. Yes, the imagery, it's like these sharp structures that are like green in tones. They're also like a darker, like energetically, they look or feel like a little bit darker, a little bit more shadowy. Not, again, doesn't necessarily mean they're outright negative. It just feels like they are more, because they're so dominant, they just feel a little bit more elusive and mysterious. In terms of like, okay, this is interesting. It's almost like they're equating it to like a secret society. That's a really good example. I was going to say it also reminds me a little bit, going off the Harry Potter reference there, it reminds me a bit of, I can't think of the school name, but it's where Victor Crumb was from. Yes, yes. I know we've made comparisons before to certain star beings, like energetically being compared to like that Victor Crumb Harry Potter energy, but they remind me of that again. It's the staffs, like in that scene where they enter and the staffs are slamming on their floor and they're very masculine. Like that is how they come across. It's also like the visual of like an army almost. It reminds me of in Game of Thrones, like the Unsullied. Like there's a mass of them and they're ready, they're warrior type in energy. And so there's like a crowd of them and they're already like dominant, armed and ready to take action.
Absolutely. The warrior energy is very different from a vegan star being or an Anunnaki star being.
Or Lyran even.
Yes, it's warrior-like, but there's a harsher tone to it. And what I want to say is they're willing to do anything to defend their culture, their group, their family, their beliefs. And I think any warrior is really willing to do that, but there's a harsher
Commitment.
yes, I don't know how else to describe it to you other than like it's sharper, it's more critical, it is more like a devotion of one's life and putting it on the line to serve and be the protector and to fight for these reasons.
Yeah, it's very radical, I feel like. It's like a radical acceptance or a radical commitment towards it. The other thing is, so they almost compare, they also are bringing the comparison of like, it reminds me of like military special ops or like black ops,
Mm.
where it's like they are the type of being where you would expect to see them in these like top secret programs or operations, like thoroughly committed to it and willing to do what it takes for whatever that mission is. And because they are so dominant and they're so almost hard nosed is the adjective coming up, that it allows them to be successful in those types of missions because they're willing to do the hard things if it's needed to push the collective or push the group forward.
I think that's a really good point because I see them being someone that is very much able to go undercover and play the long game of fulfilling a quest or challenge rather than throw that away for like instantaneous results and instant gratification. Like they're willing to put in the time and commitment to play the long game rather than look for something in the short term.
It doesn't really feel self-serving though. So if they were strongly negatively polarized, it would all be for themselves, right? Versus the positive side being for the collective. It just feels like they really vary on like how integrated they are and what side of the spectrum they swing towards. And that's why like the example of like the undercover commitment, like that could be for their own people that they believe should be in power or in charge. It could also be for the greater group. Like they could be doing it for a collective mission too.
Yes, and they do have this I'm trying to think of how to describe it. I would be willing to bet that a Maldek Starseed on Earth would be experiencing a lot more of that. I want to say like changes in energy. And I want to say they're more flippant.
Yeah.
Like I don't know about a way to describe
I was going to
it.
say extremes. That's the word coming up for me. It's
Yes.
extremes.
I feel like there's a lot of like overcorrection where like they'll do something on one end of the extreme and then it's like they overcorrect it by going to the other end of polarity and it's like extreme flippant reactions to things, whereas I think the biggest growth edge is learning to find more of that integration and a balance point and feeling comfortable with that. Um, so they might struggle more with neutrality, is what I want to say.
And like with the extremes, they're going to be more prone to like extreme reactions too. And so I feel like they would either go like 150% down the conspiracy route, or they would go completely stubborn and completely be defying something. So it's like these two extremes of like there's something that could get activated in them and they could be like, this person might be right. And then they almost like over identify with it to an extreme level, or they completely defy it and don't want to see it. Like, that's not what I believe. That's not how this works. That's not my experience, and completely defy and rebel. So it's like hard to find that like middle ground of opening themselves to maybe a new idea, a differing perspective, um, as well as like allowing themselves room to change their perspectives or opinions.
Yes, they can be a bit rigid, is the word coming through, and I think that that's one of their growth edges being on Earth as a Maldekian starseed. I also think their starseeds on Earth are going to struggle a bit more with like feminine energies.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more of this concept of receiving and more of the softer energies. They might struggle a bit with that. They might be a little more of your masculine doers.
Doers, that's the word. It does feel like they would almost be stuck in action, as strange as this sounds. Like they're not the kind of incarnation where they're going to be like processing and analyzing and not moving. It's actually opposite. Like a Maldekian Starseed feels like they are going to be taking action all the time and actually not pulling back to receive or not giving themselves space to change their mind, giving themselves space to breathe. Like it feels like they're so in the doing of masculinity that it's like, again, it's that extreme piece coming up where it could cause other parts of their life to suffer. And so, what I mean by this is they're so extreme in their commitment to things that maybe they're neglecting their personal relationships because they're too overly committed in a different area.
The thing is, it's not exactly a bad thing that they're taking action and doing aligned action. It's also one of their assets, I would say, because they're not getting stuck in overthinking things. And they do very much tap into how they feel when they make decisions. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also a strength of a Maldekian Starseed to really be tapped into how one feels in order to take action that is in alignment with how they feel. A Maldekian Starseed is not going to worry too much about what someone thinks or even really about boundaries. It feels like they very much are confident and clear in who they are and what they like and don't like and what they would like to do and how they feel about something. But there is a little bit of that stubbornness, right? Where they might not want to change their mind about something. They might get very like tunnel vision, one track mind sort of thing with certain instances, but it isn't a bad thing. It is a strength that they are so connected to their emotional and sentient feelings.
It definitely is a strength. They also are quick on their feet. Like they are able to pivot and move so fast on their feet. Like that is why they're so good, I think, at like those special ops type roles. They can strategize very quickly too, and like assess a room very, very fast as it relates to their mission and what they're doing, what their purpose is. So they bring through the example of Night Agent, the Night Agent on Netflix. And so like FBI, like special agents are so committed to their careers. Like and I bring the Night Agent example is obviously an extreme, theatrical representation of this, right? Where it's like you can't have anyone you love in your life and you're just like committed to these special missions you're on as the main character Peter is. But it's like they bring that example of Peter being like a Maldekian Starseed, where it's like Peter knows his morals, stands by them firmly, but he's quick on his feet to think and pivot and come up with plans and strategize. Like that's the example they bring through as your like a Maldekian Starseed's ability to move fast, but also stand firm in their beliefs. And if something is going to change their mind or contrast their opinion and their belief structure, like that can really rock their world. Like that will shake them, right? And that's why that Night Agent example I bring through, because there's a lot of things that happen in that show that really rock the main character's world, like questioning different leaders and things.
That's a really, really good example that they're bringing through. I also wanted to note that he chooses to stand by his values no matter what system he is in and what
Yes.
mission he is on. That character does. So, and I think that's a true example of a Maldekian starseed because they stand firm in their beliefs regardless of whatever the system is trying to tell them, if that makes sense. So, like, regardless of their 3D job or whatever role they're playing, they stand firm in their beliefs. Now, where this can sometimes get tricky is when it comes to 3D programming.
Yes.
Because if they get too attached to particular belief systems that are 3D programming, it can be hard for a Maldeek Starseed to pivot and break that because of that sheer will and one track focus, that laser focus they have, and their confidence in standing firm. Like going through a spiritual awakening, I think would be really difficult for a multi-deck Starseed. it'd be really difficult for them just because it does push you on your belief systems, like even the most basic of spiritual awakenings. So this concept of a Maldek starseed going through like a starseed awakening, it can be either really expansive for them if they open themselves to the process and surrender to the journey. But if they try to resist it too much, it can be a very painful process that feels like you're stripping away all of these things they once knew for certain and were confident in. And that's where those extreme reactions would come in again, right? Because it's like, that's not what I believe. What? And then that could cause them to pull back completely on something. And so I think that's a good point you bring up. I kind of wonder, I would question how many Maldekian Starseeds are actually conscious of that origin, because I wonder, based on their design and their mission, they might not be very conscious of that for a reason. I'm not saying it's impossible. I do, of course, think there are incarnations that are very much aware of it, but I think that could be a challenge. And just because we're describing them as having a sharper, harsher energy doesn't mean they aren't deeply empathic and doesn't mean they play a pivotal role in Earth's ascension in terms of um, helping humanity remember and helping humanity change frequency and evolve throughout time. I do think they have a very distinct role in that. But I think the warning is to not get too attached. They're bringing up this paradox of like losing your identity in your belief systems.
Mm,
And it's this concept that your beliefs are what make up who you are. And
mm.
if your beliefs are being broken, shattered, changed, it can get really disorienting to figure out like who you actually are and what you're doing here.
It's definitely a fractured identity. That's how it comes through to me. And so I think that's why a Maldekian starseed would have a very, 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 I think, unique and specific curriculum is in a human incarnation, because they really need things. All of us are on a path uniquely designed for us, right? Like, we signed up for this, don't get me wrong. But a Maldekian starseed is going to be even more unique in that path, because I do think that they would have to move a certain way in order to not completely shut down. The example they bring through is there are individuals who will go through spiritual awakenings and they will be very metaphysical with it, right? Like, they're very much into crystals and the metaphysics of spirituality, and being very open to all types of spirituality and their multidimensionality. And then they will, almost like after how many years of that, they close down into organized religion. And so that example is being brought forward to show that, something happened on the path that they switched, right? And then they all of a sudden identified and fit into the organized religion box. Not saying there's anything wrong with that. It's just a very specific organized religion has a very specific set of values and belief systems, right? Versus like just remaining open to whatever is out there metaphysically. And so there's people that go through that and then like identify down to that, to a certain religion, right? A specific religion. And so that's the example they bring through where, like, if a Maldekian starseed isn't being open enough, I would say, on their path, like we would see them being almost like forced into specific identities or like boxes, if you will, categories, versus what would happen on their path if they remain more open.
The other thing is control. Like a Maldek Starseed is not going to do well with controlling environments. They're very good at following orders, carrying out a mission, but they're not going to do well with being put in situations where they're having to always be controlled by something bigger than themselves. And I think that's because at the basic core of who they are, like they understand that they're a powerful co-creator. They are always connected to their power, whether they realize it or not, or are conscious and aware of it. So it's really difficult for them to be in an environment where fear-based systems and 3D programming is trying to tell them how to live, essentially.
I agree. I don't think they're What's so interesting is I don't think they do well, period, with somebody external telling them what to do. unless there is buy-in. Like a
Mhm.
Maldekian Starseed needs buy-in. Like they need to be buying what you are selling as a leader. And that's going to go into those core belief systems to get their buy-in, I think. If you're going to be completely off the wall, I mean, again, it's that extreme reaction. Like they're not going to be buying into that. Like there has to be something that causes them to identify with it and see that in order for them to stand by that and serve that mission as a warrior.
Yes, I do want to take a moment to talk a little bit about their planet because they are showing me some things
I'm
about
glad you're bringing this up.
showing me some things about Maldek in particular. And I want to touch on this. I don't want to call it like a myth, but it's like the legend of Maldek, or I don't want to use the pseudoscience word,
Theory.
but it's like a theory, right? And it isn't proven, like we said in the beginning. Like there isn't necessarily proof, but that doesn't mean it's not real.
It reminds me a little bit of Nibiru, right? Like when we
Mhm.
talked about Nibiru as this planet that the Anunnaki are on, and like, does it exist? Some say it does appear after so many years, some say it doesn't. We have Sumerian texts that mention it possibly, but there's a different meaning to the word. Maldek definitely falls into that conspiracy or theory category.
So, what they're talking about, to me at least, is that they're talking about their civilization and it being a very advanced, like, I want to say technologically advanced, like, in terms of like new Earth, I'm going to call it new Earth technologies, even though, like, I don't even know if I want to call it new Earth technologies, but I don't really know what else to call it.
Would you compare it to Atlantis?
I think it's its own version.
Okay.
I would agree with that. I think it's its own version of advanced technology and civilization and belief systems. Um,
They do feel so different. So
but
Atlantis
it
just feel elementally it's like completely different than like because Maldek feels really like I don't want to say grounded, but it is very much like land up in space, but also like land feeling
It
versus
is. I was going
Atlantis.
to say that the one thing I'm noticing too, especially when you like brought up the Atlantis comparison, is that it doesn't feel as free.
No, Atlantis feels very flowing and open-minded, and I feel like Maldek is a lot more like structured.
Yes. And I think that that plays a key in some of the growth edges and beliefs and characteristics that their star seeds bring to Earth now. Um, because it's very like regimented and regulated is the word of like how they utilize their technology, how they operated as a society and system and civilization. And it feels like the best way I can describe this is if we surrendered too much, like we would lose control. And it also feels a little bit like it moved so rapidly, like the advancements, that they also lost control of it.
Mm.
And so, like, the bigger message being
Mm.
to ponder here is why is it wrong to lose control?
That feels accurate. Yeah, that energetically feels accurate to the energy of the planet and what was occurring there. Um, there are also theories about so Maldek as a planet is supposedly exists between I think Jupiter and Mars. And there's been this theory that it's that asteroid belt there and that Maldek like combusted. Maybe there was like a nuclear explosion of some sort on that planet, and then that's what created the asteroid belt, which I think is interesting in theory only because Maldekian Star being's energy does kind of feel like an asteroid. Like it's powerful, it's hard as a rock, and it feels like it's forward, right? It's projecting somewhere, it knows its path. Like it does kind of feel like it doesn't feel random. Like they don't feel random at all, right? So I think there is something to like that asteroid belt piece. Like energetically, they do feel like kind of like an asteroid. Now, whether they actually blew up and created that, I'm not sure. That seems like a very, I mean, it seems very third dimensional as a human to like have that explanation for it. So I'm not sure that that's accurate, but I do feel like there is a connection to like that the energy of an asteroid belt.
Yes, I think so too. And I think it's this concept that lack of control leads to self destruction. That I think is a reoccurring theme that they are talking about, because like the way they're having me like reframe this is like, what's the worst that can happen if you let something get out of control? Like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, when you truly trust yourself and you're connected to your power, like, you know that nothing bad is ever going to happen to you. It's only ever going to happen for you, whatever occurs. When you trust yourself, you know that you'll be able to lead yourself through anything. So it's like flipping it. Like, what's the worst that can happen if you let something get out of control? And can you open yourself to the possibilities that may exist that you haven't thought about before? I feel like the secondary question to that. But there is something to this, because I know I mentioned earlier, I mentioned the reference to like secret society, and like they keep bringing up like we're all familiar with, well, I shouldn't say we're all familiar with, I should say I'm familiar with the Skull and Crossbones, the secret society within Yale, and the connection that those secret societies within Ivy League universities within the United States have to the United States infrastructure, for lack of a better phrase, right? Like, we're talking about privileges and roles in structure and society. So we're talking about like politicians, um, influential individuals. Like, I think about like judges, lawyers, positions of power, right? And there's a reference being made to that, and I think it's because a Maldekian Starseed in their human incarnation, as I mentioned previously, like they're great at those special ops type roles. They would fit well into like authority roles, like law enforcement, um, like even leadership, like CEO type roles, or like political roles. I think they'd fit really well in, as Lacey talked about earlier, the long game. Like, they're very much willing to play the long game to get to that outcome they might need. And also like a secret society being connected to the infrastructure, using the US as example with this, right? Being connected to the infrastructure in the US, like that would be quite a long game. Like, yes, there's some privilege there and some shortcuts, I think, through the networking, but like that's like a long game of, almost like, it reminds me of like infiltrating something and being like just working their way up to where they need to be. I think it does connect to that control topic you're bringing up, though, because like when we do think about those roles and secret societies, like there's a control piece there, right? Like, there's a piece of like, are these quote unquote founding families, for lack of a better phrase, controlling the infrastructure here? Going back to what you were saying about these leaders and these positions of power and this control element, all of that really is positions in which you're carrying out someone else's beliefs or orders for them. And I think what we're seeing now is more Maldekian starseeds on Earth that are waking up and understanding that they too have a distinct purpose and mission on Earth that doesn't always involve carrying out someone else's orders. I agree. And that's what was coming through, like, as you're saying that. It's like it's not always someone else's orders. Like, it's their own belief systems too. And what are they going to choose to radically stand behind and support? And are they going to remain open enough to see the possibilities that may exist, understand that there may be multiple truths? We talk about this from a collective ascension process. Multiple truths exist at the same time. Can a Maldekian starseed understand that and accept that? I think that's $1 million question, because we know these beings are incredibly strong and intelligent, and it's all about how much fluidity and flexibility they are going to allow themselves in terms of restructuring their reality and their very foundational belief systems. With Earth's ascension, I think we're going to see more and more of them waking up and understanding, hey, wait a minute, I do have a role in this. I do have power in this, and I get to choose. I don't need to be someone else's soldier. Yes, there is, there are a million and one ways they can use this action, this dominating power, this commitment, this passion they have, uh, to push forward their own mission, to push forward the collective mission. And I think that they're a really unique type of cosmic DNA and cosmic origin to bring onto Earth right now. Lots of growth edges, lots of different things to explore. But I think one thing I do want to mention is, if you are a Maldek Starseed and you are like, I don't know if I'm tough. I don't know if I have that same laser focus that they're talking about. It is possible that you have it, but there are areas of your life that maybe you're operating out of alignment from your cosmic DNA from.
I agree. We stray from the cosmic DNA and we'll see it impact different parts of our life. And, it could be just that bit of focus you have on one specific aspect and a lack of integration in the other areas, right? Because we are multidimensional. There are many facets to our life, and a Maldek Starseed may be focusing only on one small area with that action and power.
And the other thing is, you might also just be going through certain lessons to help break you out of your uh
Belief systems.
yes, essentially that's what it also could be doing for you, because there isn't a one size fits all approach to these incarnations and how your star family structures them. They always have a very unique purpose. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of Maldek star seeds are also trying to figure out like feminine energies as well,
Mm-hmm.
because they might need to have more of that balance and integration and understand these different parts of this dualistic experience on Earth.
And as we talked about that fragmenting or fracturing of the identity, I think that is a big part of a spiritual awakening process that we'll see in a Maldek starseed. So it's not meant to feel like the end of the world. As a human, I think it can, but it is meant to make you think differently. And are you willing to open yourself to thinking differently?
I think that's the main message of what they're bringing through for their star seeds that are currently on Earth is they want to push you on your flexibility and opening yourself up to different ways of living your life in this human existence.
Different ways of being, different ways of thinking, different ways of doing as it relates to ascension.
Absolutely. And with that, we will leave you all to ponder this question about your own beliefs and identities, and maybe where you are being too rigid or too fluid.